Hey, how's it going? Master Xeon here, coming at you with another Blender tutorial. This one is to answer some questions from Iron Spy, who was asking me about some things with hair. Now the model that you're seeing here is just a base mesh that I built long ago that I used Rigify on, and I was actually just doing a little weight painting on him. And the last render is, that's before. Here we go. So here you see he's got a pretty, boring pose. And the action line doesn't really suit him well. Now this one I feel is a little bit better suited. He's got a center of gravity, he's got a better stance, but that's beyond the point. Alright, now before I go ahead and jump into hair, let's take a look at some of the materials here. Now the floor, I have it set to unselected, and this is actually just a plane. Nothing special. Over here I have wire checked and wire set as the draw type, so that way you don't see it in the scene. Then also click this little arrow here to make it not clickable, so that way it's just, like the default plane, except whenever I, hit F12, it renders out with a shadow. So it kind of gives them a little more contact with the scene. Now, in addition to that, I've also did a little bit of lighting. Some things to keep in mind is ray shadows on the area lights will make it look a lot better. I got my rim light, I got a couple of fill lights. I even got this spotlight here to kind of add more accent, and then this Hemi just adds an overall glow. So as you can see, the settings on them are nothing too special, but it's something you want to play with, especially the distance when it comes to area lights. Area lights are my favorite, but their default settings just blow out your image. So we'll just go ahead and hide our lights again. Everything's set to ray shadow with at least 4 samples, and that just assures that it'll look good when it renders. Now, forgive the weight work. First thing we're going to do is add some hair. So I already got these verts selected. Shift G, add new group. We'll just call this hair zone. Now, thanks to Jonathan Williamson, not thanks to him for showing us, but someone else had made the feature. But in these quick effects, you can now add quick fur, quick explosions, quick smoke, and quick fluid. And these things are definitely worth looking into. Instead of going all the way into particles panel and all of that, you can just select an object, quick effects, quick fur, and you have a decent start. And if you look into particle settings, we'll just go ahead and check advanced because the default settings will never suffice. And we see that it has created 2 materials here, fur material and material 1. Material 1 is the skin, fur material of course is the fur material. If you go down here, you can see what your material index is set to. So since this is 2, that means it's going to use the second material in the slot for the object, in case you didn't know that. Now, in addition to that, it's also enabled children, 100 particles per 1, that's good. But the first entry material that it gives you will not be pleasing to look at. That looks like fur, but we could definitely make it look better. And we could also make him not look like a bear. So, first things first, we'll go over here and let's take a look at our material. Now, whenever you're messing with hair, you want to change this over to show the strand primitive, and always just bring this up here and then lower it out. Another thing is to hit transparency. Go ahead and just turn that off. Alright, so you see nothing here. Well, we gotta go make it reveal now. So we'll just call this strand color. And we're going to change this to a blend texture. and we set it to map to color in alpha. If we take a look at our material, black. So we hit ramp, and you can set both the color and the opacity in the same color ramp. So the color ramp is like from one end of the strand to the other. Real easy. In fact, if you wanted, you could also map it to different things. Like, you know, if I hit emit, I could set it where the tips of each strand would emit a light. Like if I was going for like a, I don't know, a sci-fi look or something, that's what I'd be messing with. So I'm going to go ahead and set this one to alpha 0 as well. So this ramp is alpha 0 to alpha 0. We're going to go ahead and add our first one. We're going to make this one brown. And we're going to raise the alpha to 2.75. So there we go, we got our first one. Actually, just turn off music. Tired of YouTube flagging my videos for having music. So from here you just play with the opacity. We'll just bring this one to 0.8. Make it a little darker, maybe a little lighter actually. Add another one, bring this one up. This one's going to be actually, let's see, what do we got here? We're at 0.80. This one is going to be 0.90. And then, so now we have our strand fading away. So it starts out pretty harsh, and we're just pulling them around now just to see what we got here. Now if we hit material, we can see what we got. Render it out again, and it certainly is beginning to look a little better, but it still does not look good enough. So under strand settings, you want to change this to blender units. You want to lower the root to something logical. Now I was playing with this the other day and I got to thinking, you know, hair doesn't really lower too much in the thickness from one end of a strand to the other. So, but for this example, I think it just will maybe look a little better. It also isn't capturing all the details, so we'll raise that up, render it out again. And now we render out again. We see that we need more tweaking. Everything in Blender is just a matter of tweaking until you get the results that you're looking for. So lower my root, my tip, just to see what I can get here. Now this hair, even though it's, you know, it's not very thick, it shows no sort of shadowing contact with the surface. So how do you fix that? Well, the hair is transparent. So what does that mean? It means in order to get it to cast a shadow on this material, we have to go down here and check under shadow options, receive transparent. And on the floor, it might not hurt as well, even though I don't think it'll have much effect. We render it out again. And here we go, our bear man is coming to life. But he's not a bear man, he's just a man. So let's go right here, select our guy, go over to particle settings, and we're going to go under vertex groups and set this to, I just named it hair zone. And there we go. So we got our guy, and he's going to be coming out with a nice little afro. And that is looking a lot better. However, I do think that there may be too much hair. Lower And then one other thing is we might want to go over to the materials, put it over, go to our fur material, the root, or actually let's copy the tip with Control C and Control V, paste it in the other one. So now we should have significantly thinner hair. Alright, looks like it's going to look the same on me. So let's exit out. We're going to change this to 40. Render it again. And another useful thing is, instead of waiting for it to render the whole scene, if you are in camera view, just press Alt-B. Or wait, no, my mistake. Alt-B to remove that. Control-B. Wait, Shift-B. And now, instead of rendering the whole thing, we render out only this section with the hair, and that'll allow you to, test it a little bit quicker. So now the next thing is dressing up the hair. When it comes to dressing up the hair, let's go ahead and select all these bones. We're just going to Shift L, add new pose, bring up the T panel. We're just going to call this stats. We're going to select all the bones, Alt G, Alt R, and we're going to Shift L again, name this pose base pose. So now if we I believe it's Control L, and you can just, with Control L, you can just go through your poses, so it's a lot easier than doing that all manually. So now we got him up in this point. We are going to right click him. First we're going to Alt B and just isolate just his face. And this will be good as well. Control Tab, or Control Tab to get out of pose mode, hide the rig, and voila. Now we are messing with just him by himself. Right click the model. For some reason it's taking a moment to calculate. We'll lower that down to 1 to get responsiveness back in our viewport. Whenever you're applying a rig, make sure that you aren't using envelopes and you choose preserve volume, so that way it doesn't squash too badly. And we see here we need to Shift B and redraw a rect. Now to get rid of this rect, you would just Shift B, just draw over the whole viewport in case you get stuck. Now let's go ahead and play with our hair. Jump into particle mode. Now the good thing about children is that it does allow you a little bit of versatility when customizing the hair, because the character doesn't have all those strands displayed. Like I used to always give it 1,000 strands or 10,000 strands and then just try messing with it from there, and it just never worked out. So I'm not the best hairstylist, you'll have to forgive me, but we do want to cut off some of the strands from the face, maybe up here, and let's come out of object into object mode, and this is what we got. And that actually looks very awful. So back into particle mode, we're going to just choose add. Maybe raise our count to 5 so it adds 5 strands a second, or whatever increments it uses to do this. And we'll just paint some more hair, and for each strand that we paint it adds 40 children, so you could quickly get overboard with it. And if we come out into object mode, we got a nice little shag do. Go back into particle mode, cut, still got a shag do. What is going on here? we see that our strands are set to interpolated. If we set it to simple, I think it may get us slightly better results. So we render it out. And here we see we have a character that is ready to rock. Now we're going to go back into particle mode. This time we're going to enable children so we see what we're actually dealing with. And F. And this requires a little bit of tweaking, but it's not too bad. Like, these things do not, you can't be done in 30 seconds. If you're making something that you plan to showcase, you're of course going to want to spend a little bit of time to show that you care. So now that was our first hairdo. We press J, jumps over to another render slot, F12. And lo and behold, now it looks a little bright. Definitely the lighting. The lighting in the back is set up to give them a nice rim accent going along the body. So we just Control J, and just J by itself, and we can look through and see our progress with this. So let's go back into viewport, Alt B, come into this view, Shift B, draw a full box to remove that limitation. And in this view, it's just pretty much this model isolated by itself without the rig. As you can see, my layout's called weight painting, which is what I was using when I was painting it earlier. It's still not ready for animation just yet, but whenever it's done, I'll put it on blend swap. Let's go ahead and let's choose our model. There seems to be a lot of objects here. There we go. I didn't want to Alt-H unhide everything because I'd have to hide a ton of stuff again. But we're going to select the rig, go into pose mode, Control L, just rotate this back, and now when we render it out, now, if it shows up dark, that means that you might be in local mode, especially if you have your lights. These are things that, when I first started Blender, used to drive me crazy. In fact, I used to become so infuriated over the fact that pressing P sometimes would crash the program completely because I'd be working on this complex scene, all these modifiers, not built for the game engine, press P to start the game engine accidentally, and Blender would crash. So, keep those sort of things in mind, because when it comes to troubleshooting it, Blender isn't nearly as bad as it used to be. It's gotten much better. I remember there was a time when it would crash on me at least 10 times a day, and I was still pretty dedicated. So there we go. So now we got our hair. Now let's pretend let's go ahead and play with some dynamics. One moment. Alright, now continuing. The other thing is dynamics that I want to go over. More importantly, hair dynamics. But first, we'll start off with an example. Whenever it comes to dynamics in 3D, you can't just calculate it on the fly unless you've got a pretty slick PC. In whichever case, it's still bad practice to not bake it. Now, as you can see, I'm hitting Alt-A in the viewport and everything's running pretty fluidly. It's running fluidly because it's already calculated the frames of the cloth animation. Like, I could even, move this and it would still go around an invisible cube because it's been baked with the cube there. So let's put that back, GZ1, put it back. And if we just Alt-A, we see that it goes through. Now for cloth, you will find the bake under here, where after you've saved your file, you can just hit bake and it will begin baking all your dynamics, in which all your objects in the scene, you also want to give them the collision over in the physics section. So that way, whenever you hit Alt A, it all runs fast and you get predictable results. Once you bake it, you can rest assured that it will look exactly like that unless you deviate from the order that you have here. Like right now, this is set up like with a subsurf modifier of 2. If I change this to 1, it is broken apart. But if I go ahead and change that back to 2, it renders properly. So just remember that if you do change anything with the object, you will have to rebake. So back over to the hair example. So we got our guy here. We're going to go ahead and go over to this and choose hair dynamics, which I have already checked. You know what also probably be a little cool is to just add a force field vortex, and we'll give it a strength of 2 maybe, and we'll just place that there. Now also, I've went through the liberty of, I thought I created an alternate pose for him, so we'll turn on automatic keyframing, go to this frame, select all bones, G, R, and that'll set a keyframe. Now I remember back in the day, pressing up would go forward 10 frames, and I kind of missed that. Now it goes only to the keyframe, up and down. Of course, the hair dynamics are going crazy because they have not been baked, but there also is not an animation yet. So we'll just make this a 30 frame animation, which is a little bit longer than 1 second. Alright, and so we're going to take this pose, Control L, let's see what other poses we got here. Okay, so we'll animate him going to that, and then let's see, we'll actually extend this to 50 frames, so 2 seconds of footage. And we're just going to grab the head object. Let's see, right there is about good. Ignore the hair, like I said. We're going to rock his head forward, rock it back, rock it forward again, rock it back. So if we look at our animation, let's turn off hair just so we can see what the animation is. So we'll just go under the properties, the modifiers, uncheck view and that, and now, not the best animation, but this is a tutorial. If y'all want something on animation, just let me know. I can show y'all some of the basics of that, but as you can see, the hair is not going correctly. Might be a little late to turn this on, seeing that this tutorial is almost over, but never hurts. Sorry about that. But there's not really a lot of keyboard shortcuts being used here, so we'll select this guy, we'll go back over to hair, and what do you know, right here we have the option to bake. Set this to 50 frames, hit bake. That'll take a moment to bake. I'll pause the recording. Alright, now after baking, we go and hit Alt A. Now I was having some issues with the baking, which involved me having to go and adjust these settings. Now, if you hover your mouse over this catch setting here, number of frames between catch frames, I lowered this down to 1 so it would calculate the dynamics each frame. Usually it's set to 10, I believe. But whatever the case may be, sometimes you may have to adjust this if the hair starts going crazy. So let's go ahead and play back. There's also a vortex object, so that's why the hair is moving quite a bit. So it's like he's out there in the wind. But we'll hit pause right here. And that is not looking too bad. It's definitely better than a strand primitive. Now we can take it probably a step further. Maybe try reducing the size a little more. Let's see, what's lower than 150? We'll just make it divide by 2. Because Blender's also able to calculate it if you put it in there in the form of a math problem. If you're wanting to do it like that. So let's render it out. The strands should be a lot thinner. Half as thin as they were before. See, it's taking longer to render. And there you have it. Now, whenever it comes to the hair may not be so wavy and movement. The movement of the hair may be moving a little bit more than you would want. So then that's where you would go into your settings and begin adjusting the stiffness, the mass, the spring, of course. The spring is definitely important. You see that for this one, higher equals more smooth, less jiggling. Let's actually hit free bake so these options are available. We'll take this up to 15. We'll take the quality up to 15, which will also increase the bake time, actually 25. And I'll just save it, pause the recorder, and I'll be back after bake. Alright, and so we play it back again, and he is still looking like he is, oh my god, a tornado. Yeah. So the hair is still moving quite a bit. Let's try free baking. We're going to raise the stiffness. Pin vertex target position. We'll try just raising it to 2. Just start off with 2. And this right here, we'll go ahead and raise that up so it's not bending so much. And we'll hit bake again. Alright, so now I'm back even one more time. So Alt A. Yeah, tornado. Yeah, tornado. And we see that the hair is definitely looking a lot better. So that's not too bad. In fact, we could even take this a step further. Let's see. Actually, the poses in right now, I was thinking of adding a cape to them, but I actually see that that would require that I went back down to the rigging and set up a cloth. Let's see. So instead, maybe I'll come back and do that on a later video. However, if you do have any questions or anything like that, just send me a message, and if it's a good one, I will prepare a video to answer whatever questions you could possibly have. But that'll do it. That is making decent looking hair and even adding dynamics to it using Blender. We'll just wait for this. Boy, that's some messy hair. But you get the point. Happy blendering.